I get it. I'm going to have to jump on GarageBand and start sawing something together. This is the House Bar Show. Wow. And then a guitar note, and then progressive, and all that. Yeah, it's going to be good.
Hey, Hal, did you mean something like this?
This is the House Bar Show. Wow. And then a guitar note, and then progressive, and all that. Yeah, it's going to be good.
The Hal Sparks radio program, mega worldwide.
Yeah, it's going to be good. So obviously, the big story of the week, though, Breyer stepping down. And now, the Biden administration has a chance to, while not add a liberal justice, arguably, to the bench, extend one. Thank you, Benny Loco, for the super chat as well. Thank you guys for joining us. And by the way, oh my gosh, thanks, Jay, for contributing to that hype train by gifting subs to folks on Twitch, twitch.tv/HalSparks. Great way to support the show if you have Amazon Prime. It doesn't cost you a dime. Now, Biden has, of course, it looks like he's looking at Judge Childs, who's she was nominated by Obama to the U.S. District Court, and she's a black woman judge, and Biden would like to, add a black woman to the SCOTUS. And of course, what does that mean? Reverse discrimination. Yeah. Oh dear God. We cannot do this. This is a terrible, terrible thing. It's horrifying. This is there are all these highly qualified old white guys that should be considered first. Under the premise, I suppose, that there are not and have never been black female judges that would absolutely be worthwhile on the SCOTUS for their intellect, their decision-making, their fairness, their knowledge of the Constitution. That doesn't exist. Never mind that they've been previously just blazed past them. Weren't even in the list. Right? And by the way, those people who are suggesting Anita Hill, while I love you for your hilariousness, because of the just the pictures of the SCOTUS with her and Clarence Thomas on opposite sides of the picture, just side-eyeing each other, would be indeed hysterical. Would be, proof that we live in a simulation. But it's like we live in just like an ironic computer program. In this particular sense, there are a lot of qualified women, African-American women who are on the bench in other places that are totally qualified, that you have never heard of.
Yeah. And
should get a shot, not because they've been in the press or something like that, in this sort of odd, like we're picking for sports teams or something. Don't get me wrong. Bumping Kamala over to it and bringing in Hillary as VP. As bizarre psychological nukes dropped on the delicate sensibilities of Republicans would again be hilarious and proof we live in a simulation. Because, oh my God, can you imagine? Fox News would just burst into flames. There's a chef's kiss aspect of how crazy the world would be. But that's not what you want the SCOTUS for. Quite frankly, you want a bunch of people you kind of never heard of who actually give a crap. And the reason you never heard of them is because they give a crap and want to stay out of a lot of this stuff. Yeah. That's the kind of person you want on the SCOTUS is somebody who isn't necessarily looking for it. The problem with Amy Coney Barrett, for example, was somebody like, we're going to position her. And she's like, you can position me. I will make sure I will dovetail my choices in court to keep me in the sweet spot so that I won't go after the laws we're trying to get rid of until I'm in a position to. That kind of stuff. That's creepy, manipulative. They knew that. You don't want that. You want somebody who's like, I may not like it, but this is the way the law stands with the Constitution, and it will ultimately be fairer for everyone if we judge this way, right? But their fear is that, dear God, a black woman, she will enact revenge, because they're so vengeful in their mindset, they can't imagine her coming in and being fair and sensible. That's really where they are. They're projecting their own vengeful reflexes onto someone. So, Stephen Breyer came out and of course was like, we're in a civil war, and, all of his quotes that came out this week, which are, I understand his concerns because of what comes across his desk. If you have a bottleneck of what you experience as far as human life, which everyone on the SCOTUS does, and the longer you've been there, you are at the pressurized end of a fire hose of legal and social fights in the American society. I mean, honestly, SCOTUS's drink from a fire hose. That's what they do. Because everything, while we're all dealing with stuff out in the world and going, well, how do I feel about this? Because they're back and forth about this. They're the ones that narrow the law to either exclude or reject certain legal arguments and political ideals from a certain circumstance, because they will serve to limit people's rights down the road or that kind of stuff. So they are drinking from the fire hose of America's social fight all the time. And the fact that they can even maintain is hysterical. And by the way, when Kavanaugh and Amy Coney Barrett don't side with Trump immediately on stuff or toe the line in other cases, the freak out is real. Like, it's heavy duty. The hatred comes, hot and heavy on, you know what I mean? Like, it's a misery. So right wingers, I would argue, short of Clarence Thomas, all the rest of them, this group, my prediction is, while Kavanaugh and Amy Coney Barrett will be with us for a long time, they're not going to hang around as long as RGB and Breyer did. They're gonna retire way earlier, because for them, but for a couple of wins that they might get on the board that they get total accolades for, if they can try to send Roe v. Wade back to Congress, where it will be salvaged, by the way, by Democrats again, in an even tighter and more focused law, because it will have to be, because we're not going to let awful happen to women no matter how much Republicans want it. As much as they might get credit for those wins, the minute they don't side, it's what have you done for me lately? The second they don't let some sort of you should be able to own a nuclear missile. The right to bear arms is sacrosanct and irrefutable. What well-regulated militia? Phooey. The average American should be able to build a Scud in their basement and fire it at their neighbor in self-defense, right? And the minute they go, nah, I don't think so, they're back to being hated again. It doesn't last. It's fickle. And it's brutally and angrily fickle on the right side. And so I think they'll bug out earlier, this batch, because they were sent to do one particular mission. Once it's over, it's over. It's a thankless job. Always will be. And the only good they'll get is if they do those two things and then get the heck out of there. Because, again, the arc of human society bends towards progress. Whether they like it or not, we're going to become a more open and free society, more accepting, broader in our acceptance of human beings on the margins of life. Sorry, that's where we've always been headed. It's always where we're going to be going. There's nothing you can do about it. We're all, the kids, they look at their children and they're like, why is my kid as bigoted as I was? Well, the same reason you're not as bigoted as your father and your mother were. Because even as much as they might try, you can't pass it along as well. Even the kids that are getting busted for doing racist kind of stuff are doing it in a social media kind of meme way, which, while awful and reprehensible, is nowhere near the Ku Klux Klan level of violence that was happening in the early 1900s. Just the fact. And that's the way society's going. Get used to the idea. And they know this. Amy Coney Barrett knows this. Kavanaugh knows this. They know they're not putting this toothpaste back in the tube. But they got a couple of things they're going to try to win on, because they're extremists on a couple of layers. But everything else, they're kind of libertarian and don't give a crap about, or they want to prove their constitutional bona fides by guaranteeing, while I will totally go against constitutional law and equal protection for women under the law when it comes to things like Roe v. Wade, I'll boost it in other areas so I can take some of the heat off me, which will make Republicans mad. So I think they're going to get out earlier. But for, Clarence Thomas, the chances of us replacing another, for example, are fairly small. Doesn't mean it's not possible, but this is the singular chance, and I think it's wise and it's a good timing. Gives us plenty of time. There's no chance that a hold will happen. The filibuster carve out exists for SCOTUS, always has, so that's helpful. Unfortunately, that's how they got Kavanaugh and Amy Coney Barrett, but it will also protect this direction. So fingers crossed. And again, the idea that somehow this is reverse discrimination or just plain old discrimination because Biden has already said he wants a black woman on the court as representative of the public. Any cries about that have to recognize, I believe, that there are clearly qualified black female judges in the past that just were never given a shot because of their gender and their skin color. And remedying that is not reverse discrimination. It's a recognition that there are qualified candidates out there who have been passed over. Not
there is no such
affirmative
thing as
action
reverse
hire
discrimination.
idea.
It drives me bonkers.
Right. Well, in this particular case, when you've only got 9 seats, period, and it's supposed to be a representational, group of people, to some degree, one would think.
Like it's almost a case for this is why you need to do this.
Right.
It needs to be representative.
In this particular case, and by the way, the idea that they're not going to like some of her decisions because she's black is the crazier part. Because again, the crime bill, which they were going to run against Biden on, was supported by the majority of black mayors in the country. It was supported by the Congressional Black Caucus because of the victims of crime in their districts at the time in the early 90s. We got to take a break. We'll be back right after this. It's the Hal Sparks Radio program, mega worldwide on WCPT Radio, Chicago's Progressive Talk.